first time I met Greg was in 1974. I was part of a provincial volleyball team and I had to come down for a practice at UBC, and Greg was one of our opponents that we were to play against, as we're a few years younger than Greg, and so he was one of the people that they put up us against, and he was a force in 1974. Playing against Greg was not fun. It's never fun to play against anybody with that much reach, that much skill, and that much determination to win. I can tell you what it feels like to play with him a lot better, and playing with him as if you're an outside hitter and he was blocking with you in the middle, you were compensated a lot by his incredible ability to lean over and to actually compensate for any lack of height that any of the smaller players might have had. And he was an incredible, intimidating blocker, just terrific to play with.
He was tall, dark and handsome. Yeah, I knew a bit about him because I remembered when I played volleyball at Dalhousie in Halifax, I remembered seeing him come to the Olympic team beforehand and played across the country, so I'd seen him then. And yeah, he just seemed like a nice, kind of quiet guy.
As a teammate, it was an amazing experience because Greg wasn't a vocal player on the court. He wasn't a yeller and a screamer or a rah-rah man. He played by example, and if you just followed an example as to how hard he tried, how hard he worked, and how much determination he had, it lifted you to another level. And sometimes you didn't know that until the match was over and you realized that you probably accomplished something that you wouldn't have accomplished if Greg Russell wasn't on the floor. Tom Jones tells this story better than anyone, but Greg went up to block and it was a misplay and everything was misdirected, and somehow the ball got what we call six-pack. Greg got it square in the face. And he came down, and if that's ever happened to you, you know what it's like to see stars for a few minutes. And Greg turned and looked at Tom and he said, "Just don't set me on the next play, but don't tell Maeda this happened." Maeda was the coach. "Don't tell him it happened. I don't want to come out." And it just shows you his determination, his ferocity to be part of a team and to be on the floor and to compete. And that really stands out because Greg Russell is Greg Russell, and you just want to be part of him when you're on the floor.
As a coach, he really brought the best out in whoever he was coaching, and always looked for really good opportunities for them to get better, like he did when he was playing. And so if our children showed interest in beach, he, created an opportunity to go down to Huntington Beach and live in California for 3 weeks and train there, and brought our children, but also a lot of other kids, and a lot of them really developed well after that. Congratulations, Greg, on your induction into Volleyball BC Hall of Fame.
Greg, on behalf of all of your teammates, internationally, nationally, and provincially, we are so proud of you and such a deserved honor to be part and be inducted tonight into the Volleyball BC Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Greg. You deserve it hugely.
So the other night I sort of looked through the letters, like 6 or 7 letters, and I thought I'd try to sort of boil them down to some of the some of the top traits that you would attribute to a top performing athlete. And it's pretty much without exception, this is very accurate actually. Number 1, you need to be tall. Okay, thanks Mom, thanks Dad. I'm sure that helps, but I didn't really have much to do with that. Number two, well, having a good beard apparently helps. That picture up there was sort of the precursor, I guess, to the actual full beard, but especially Tommy Graham, he thinks that was a good intimidation factor. So be tall, have a good beard. And the third, and there's no question about this, they all talk about it, went to Jerry's place for like a warm-up celebration last night, and it came out again. You have to sweat prodigiously. Yeah, there's no question. So. There's so many sweating stories, I've forgotten half of them. But seriously, the letters were fantastic, and like I say, I'll treasure those forever. And those were not the three biggest, well, actually they were, yeah. I play with a lot of different people, a lot of different people in this room actually, and it would be difficult to highlight teams from Montreal, from Calgary, from Edmonton, and from BC and talk about them all. But I always, as a middle, I played most of my career as a middle, and I really want to thank some of the setters. Keith Gallicano is here tonight. Brian Newman, big Volleyball BC guy, actually he's from Alberta. Paul Chu, and of course Tom Jones. It was basically because of their skill and their generosity, really, that I do what I can attacking on the court. Sort of a silver lining to not playing as much anymore is that you know, I was looking at my finances and sort of there's a line item there for beers for setters, which it's gone, and well, Keith doesn't even drink, so hammer. Yeah. Anyway, I'd like to go through a quick chronology of the early years, not the later stuff, but the early years. Charles already mentioned Claremont, and the only reason I started playing volleyball is because they canceled the basketball program. Seriously, they canceled the basketball program at Claremont, and a coach named Andy Bryant got me into the gym. He had us in at lunchtime, after school, and he picked me up and took me to play in Esquimalt in a men's league every week. Nobody knows Andy Bryant, right? Vic, you do? Yeah, okay, Victoria guys. Does he? Lucky guy. Yeah. And so grade 12, actually we qualified for provincials. I think we came like 9th, not to diminish any of the Revelstoke achievements over there. After high school, Claremont, I went up to UVic, and Don Smith, all the Victoria people know him, and he's been mentioned tonight. Yeah, my dad was one of his biggest fans, actually, and I really appreciated my first year with him. After that, I took off to France for a year, and I went and studied, it was to study French, really, but I played volleyball at the University of Montpellier, southern France. And there was a club administrator there, Monsieur Chaud, Mr. Hot, yeah, Monsieur Chaud. And I didn't really understand what he was saying at the time, but he said, 1976, Montreal. What? I had no idea what that meant until much later on. He says, but later on I figured out, we will meet each other in Montreal in 1976 at the Olympic Games, and I actually saw him there at the Olympic Games in 1976. When I came back from France, back to UVic, and there was another key moment in sort of my development is the Vancouver Volleyball Club guys invited me out to play and train with them. So in particular, I think Mike Rockwell and Dale Lohman, I think, were the guys that approached me about it. And so on a weekly basis, I would get on my brother's little 350 Honda motorcycle, take the ferry to Vancouver, and practice in some elementary school gym, and go back to Dale's place. He'd fire up some chops and fries, and then back on the first ferry in the morning. And but you have to understand, these guys were gods at that time. Like, they were Mike Rockwell, Fred McMurray, Vosberg, Mr. Witzke. They jumped out of the gym. They hit the ball so hard. It was inspiring to play with those guys at that point in my development. Anyway, so how did I get to the national team? Vic knows the story. Vic's a big part of the story. In the summers, I worked for the BC Forest Service, and I'd been working up in Chetwynd, I think, and came down for like a 2-week break. And Vic got me out to practice and train, and he told me there's a tryout in Montreal for the Olympics for '76, and gave me, I think you gave me Jean Catalan's number, a guy that I actually had met once in an elevator in Edmonton. Don Smith had introduced me to him, actually. I paid my way to Montreal, and get this though, I mean, 1 year high school, 4 years of Victoria UVic. I had no, realistically, there's no way I'm making this team, but I took the shot, went out there, and made the team, actually. And thank you, Vic. I mean, that would never have happened. I had no idea about that tryout whatsoever, if you hadn't told me. So I actually lost my job because of that, because I never, I never went home, so. I never met all these guys, Larry and so on. So, you know, just like Andy Bryant, Rockwell and Oman and Vic affected me, I'm sure everybody in this room has affected people like, well, Fred Winters. You know Fred Winters? He's from Claremont. I share a wall of fame at Claremont with Fred Winters. I'm so proud of that. Yeah, he is the best. He'll be in this, he should be in this Hall of Fame one day. Write that name down. Anyway, I'd just like to talk about, well, a few current national team people. There's 2 girls, Alexa Gray and Kristen Monks. Incredible stories. Our reason for touching them was that we did, when my wife and I and my sister Sylvia and her husband Jamie did an immersion beach program in California for 3 weeks. And so we had a group of girls come down to California. We were doing 2 days in the sand, and we rented a house. It was during the week we did the 2 days, and on the weekends they had local kids tournaments and adult tournaments that the girls played in. And Kristen and Alexa are 2 products of that. And I have to say that although I think the training was important, they developed skill-wise, but I mean, they're not beach players now. But actually, Sylvia and Jamie, they're educators, my sister and brother-in-law Jamie. And in the evenings in the house, there would be these counseling sessions, probing about what their plans were. You know, and it's, you know, especially Alexa Gray, I hope she doesn't mind me talking about her too much. She had lost her mother, and there were a lot of things going on in her life. She turned out to be an all-star at BYU and now to the national team. Another guy that I'd like to mention, Gord Perrin. He's the current captain on the national team, who a big actor in their success in the World League last year. I was down at the beach last summer watching some a beach tournament, probably Jimmy's tournament, and Gord Perrin was there. Well, Gord Perrin, we selected to the provincial Team BC when he was 15. And he was kind of a moody player, much like me, actually. When I practice, it's, you know, I mean, it's intense, but sometimes I think people take me the wrong way. The next year, actually, and Gord Perrin that first year, playing a year younger on my team, was so instrumental to our success in the tournament. I think we did win the tournament or second, I can't remember exactly. But the next year I was coaching the girls, and Pat Henley from Kamloops was coaching the guys. And he came to me and said, what's with Gord Perrin? And I said, don't worry about it. He will be your best player at the tournament. He was the MVP of the tournament. And you know, spike competition winner the next 2 years. I spoke to Gord Perrin that last summer, and he said, you know, I don't know what would have happened in my life if that hadn't been, if volleyball hadn't happened to me, Team BC had not happened to me. You know, you don't know how much you can change people's lives. And what we're doing here, and I include everybody, is that it's incredible what transformations can happen to young kids to make them the leaders they become. Where am I? So, yeah, I want to say that Volleyball BC as BCVA, Volleyball BC, has sort of been the structure, not so much around my life, but around this community, as other people have been stating. And I want to start with different groups in Volleyball BC. I started Focus Volleyball Club, I don't know, year 2000. There's a guy named Barton Lim, and I know some people may not know him at all. He spends so many hours recruiting kids into volleyball at the age of, you know, grade 6, 7, and 8 in Burnaby. And he's running the volleyball club now. Parents, Brad and Alan Curry, that we had in our club, and Rob Brett, Richard Thane, Curtis Chaplin, my sister and brother-in-law helped coach in the club. And that's just our club. Fraser Valley and all the other clubs that you're very aware of. I'd really like to thank all the high school teachers. High school is a bit different, you know, it's an educational situation, and it's definitely a volunteer situation for most high schools, but I think it's so critical to the climate of a school that there's competitive sports. So thank you, teachers, especially John Campbell. Also, special thanks to people like Rod Belinsky and Sharon Carter, who run the championships they run it for AA, AAA boys. I mean, what they do for the kids in those BC championships is also inspiring. After BC championships, these kids get selected to Team BC programs, and that is such a tough gig as a coach. Like, everybody has a vested interest as a parent, maybe as a post-secondary coach, to make a fair selection and make sure that the Gord parents make it through. It's critical. Beach, Jimmy, thank you. Jim Clive has impacted and provided so many opportunities to develop players. And you know, the great thing about Beach is, especially if you're a middle, you have the opportunity to pass, to compete every single play. You're touching the ball all the time. And I know our son Alex benefited from that, not just from the competition, but there's prize money, Jimmy. Yeah, and that's significant. I think he made more money in Jimmy's tournaments. And the thing about that is also that it's not just Jim. There's a group of guys down there, Johnny Wiscar, Matt Laborde, you know, Kraus, and so on. They welcome everybody. I have a kid from Centennial, went there at the age of 15, and he became their Rookie of the Year, right? And actually his nickname is 15, yeah, right. Yeah. Original Jim. And it's great to see that there's a women's league doing the same thing. I really think that Beach can only develop more players. I had said in, I think, I got the President's Award here, so I spoke to this type of a group. I don't know what year it was. It's amazing that we're not doing better internationally, given the quality of coaching and development that's happening in Canada. Well, it's happening now, and you guys are all part of that. I think I want a couple of things. Well, my high school, I'm okay for time, sir? 1 minute?
60 seconds.
Yeah.
60 seconds.
My Centennial kids asked me this year, like, what's the key to success? I said, hard work. No, what got you there? Hard work. And pretty much a sense of urgency, the opportunity to train efficiently and effectively, but it's really about hard work and doing a little bit more than the people in your position, the other people even in your team, beating your teammates out and having that belief. I want to talk about 4 of the most difficult experiences in my career. Number 1 was 1974 tryout with Bill Neville. People just eat. It was over the top. After that, Super Volley in 1981-82. Tom and I talked about that. The past 1976 team played a 6-set or a 5-set match and won that. The reason I wanted to mention that was that in the second set, I looked around, my wife was gone. She ditched me for the social. But I think, well, that was before we were married, and I guess it paid off. Yeah. But family is everything. My parents, they're both passed now. Thank them. I want to thank all our kids, Benjamin, Lindsay, Alexander, and Sarah, for the time I may not have spent with them. And finally, I want to thank my wife, who has supported me through everything. 550,000 kilometers on the Previa van, running 4 kids around the Lower Mainland. So thank you. Good night.